This is Lewis Art for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store. Delighted today to be joined here in King's Cross with Ben Shalom. Nice to be invited down today. How's things? How are you, mate?
Very good. Obviously been very busy. A lot of fights happening, but good to see you, mate.
Yeah. Absolutely, good to see you too. And yeah, as I say, August is always like a quiet month for boxing, but there's been a lot happening. Obviously, we saw October 12th undercard get announced. Yesterday, we saw the announcement of Adam Azim against Ohara Davies, and obviously TKV against Franklin Natius today. After obviously the Callum Simpson show, it's been very busy. Been very busy for yourself.
It has. Obviously, September 21st coming up, the huge Riyadh season event, which we're delighted to be involved in. October 12th, the Riyadh season event as well, which is just a ridiculous card again. And then October 19th, which has just been announced, which is a huge fight at the Copper Box and one that's creating a huge amount of interest. So really looking forward to it.
Absolutely, for sure. And I know I mentioned Callum Simpson there. I just want to touch on that. Obviously getting a great British title win, and I think it's only sort of right to start off that he obviously had tragic news of his sister passing away. So I guess a fitting thing for yourself that the hearts of myself and the heart of boxer go out to him and his family.
Yeah, I think it's hard to talk about. It's just so shocking. Such a close family as well. It's one of those situations where no words can even do anything. I think it puts into perspective what's important in life. Horrendous news for the family. Obviously, everyone at Boxer's heart is currently with Callum and his family, and horrific news, and obviously just pray that they'll be okay, and at this moment in time don't want to discuss boxing. It's that it is so hard, and my heart's with him.
Absolutely, I think everyone echoes them comments. We'll go straight into the business. Yesterday, Adam Azim, Ohara Davies announced. It took a bit of time getting an opponent for Adam over the line. Obviously, I know there was a couple discussed that we'll get into. Ended up with Ohara Davies a little bit later, obviously, as expected. But a really big fight and a real big step up for Adam that you're happy with.
It's huge. I think so delighted for him to be back. I think he deserves a huge amount of credit. I think Ohara deserves a lot of credit. It's a must-win fight for completely different reasons. Obviously, a guy that's 22 years old, already become European champion, possibly one of the future stars of the sport. And then you've got obviously Ohara at the end of it, towards the end of his career, absolute must-win. Both guys deserve a lot of credit. I'm excited for the show. I think it's a massive step up for Adam, one that he deserves. Obviously, the Copper Box, huge night of British boxing, particularly when we're talking about where are the British domestic blockbusters. We've got one now, and delighted to get it over the line.
And when you've got great main events, and it's always better when they've got a storyline, and this one's no different from it. Ohara, when he was in the Peacock gym, and we'd see Adam Azim when he was sort of just a young kid, 9, 10, 11, training with Tunde Ajayi. To get to that point where Ohara's seeing him as a kid, now he's grown up and an opponent of his, it all adds sort of build up to the fire on October 19th.
Huge history. As you said, both know each other a long time. Adam must have been a kid when Ohara was in the gym there. So, did Ohara probably think he'd ever fight that kid that he saw coming in the gym? Definitely not. It's one of them where it depends on what Ohara are we going to see and what Adam Azim are we going to see. Adam's been out with an injury, coming back to a big fight, but it's a huge test, a huge story. Ohara always brings it. I'm sure the press conferences, the build-up's going to be unbelievable. It's what we need for Adam, but it's also what Ohara needs. He needs a big fight and he needs a big win, and he'll be looking at this thinking, this is the time to fight Adam. Coming back off an injury at 22 years old, but huge fight. Delighted that both took it. Had to turn it around very quickly, having thought we were doing another fight. But this is arguably a tougher fight and arguably a bigger name, and October the 19th with the undercard that we're going to put in place. I'm just refreshing. Obviously, we've had a lot of big domestic fights at the start of the year. To get another one back on British soil like this, it's huge.
Absolutely, and you mentioned there about Ohara that he's always going to bring it and sell it. And I think for yourself as a promoter, like it may be a silly question because you want to promote fights, but when they're guys, when you have guys press conference antics and their behaviour sort of outside the ring, do you take that into consideration when you look at an opponent for Azim? You'll be like, okay, that might be a good opponent, but when you look at someone like Ohara, who we know he can sell it, would you sort of have a preferred option if you know that they could sell the fight more?
We didn't think when we made the Harlem Eubank fight that this fight was even possible. So for it to come around is great. But I think Ohara said it on Twitter the other day. It was like, what the fans want. Ohara gives entertainment every time, takes massive tests. He's been in some great fights throughout the year. His losses have come to, obviously he's had his last loss, but before that, Cattrall and Taylor as his only losses. High quality fighter, can punch, talks the talk, builds fights. That's what you want as a promoter, and he gets a lot of grief, Ohara, but he's a character. He's entertaining. He's perfect for Adam as well. You want to see him in an environment that might be a little uncomfortable. It's part of professional boxing. What's it going to be like at the press conference? How is he going to react to someone wanting to stick it on him? Someone that's far more experienced, that's had big nights in the sport. It's definitely something you look for, and it's what Adam needs from a profile. I think the football will finish at Sky at 7:30. We'll be into a huge car from the Copper Box. The viewing figures are going to be massive. It's going to be a massive stage. Ohara's a big name. We expect a huge audience, and Ohara's a big reason why. And Adam's got a platform now to go and show how good he is.
Definitely. I think it's only right to get onto, I guess, the elephant in the room, and I think I'm just going to give the floor to yourself here. Just before Fabio Wardley fought Frazer Clarke on the 31st of March, Adam Azim and Harlem Eubank entered the ring to do a face-off for, it's fair to say if the fight wasn't signed by that time, and it was in advanced negotiations, this fight hasn't ended up happening. I guess giving the floor to yourself, why aren't we seeing Harlem Eubank as Adam Azim's opponent?
Well, I think you have to ask Harlem. We signed for the fight. It was June 15th. That was the date. Adam got injured 10 days after March the 31st, ankle injury, and it meant that we had to reschedule the fight. Initially, we were going to do it as part of a Wardley Clarke night on August the 31st, and obviously Wardley Clarke went to Riyadh season, and then it left us, right, we've got to find a new date, a new venue, and we found Brighton on October the 5th, which we thought was going to be, because of the delay, it was almost a gesture. It's in Brighton, it's in Harlem's hometown, it's a huge fight. But Harlem communicated, changed management, and they wanted to go in a different direction at that point. And obviously I'll respect that, but I think huge credit has to go to Adam, because we had the artwork done, we were ready to go with that fight. And then we have to find another fight. And to take Ohara Davies, which is arguably a tougher fight, someone more experienced, a bigger name in boxing, I think has to take huge credit. And but as I say, we signed for that fight. Can it happen in the future? I hope. But ultimately, Harlem's decided to go in another direction.
Yeah, so when you say that, obviously there was 3 dates proposed to Harlem, which was June 15th, which he did sign for. So I guess there's no argument with that to say like he didn't want the fight or something like that. Or there's August 31st, which was another on October 5th. Do you think it was fair to say that maybe the direction from them would have been that they were sort of a bit fed up?
Definitely. Look, I've had it so many times. When a fighter gets injured, it's horrible for the fighter that gets injured, but it's arguably worse for the fighter. If you remember, we've had pay-per-views in the past that have had to be moved back, and the other fighter obviously gets more and more frustrated as to why it's not happened. And obviously we had to wait for Adam to return from injury and find a suitable date. Usually, if they really want the fight, it happens though. And so to have been ready to go to Brighton and Adam ready to go into the Lions Den, so to speak, I was surprised. But ultimately, it's up to Harlem and his team. Have they come to their senses? Did the new management not want to go down the route of the Adam Azim fight? Possibly. But for us, we're in the Adam Azim business, and we wanted a big fight for Adam, and we've got a massive fight. on October the 19th, and to be honest, it's worked out well in the end.
Would you take accountability for the fight not happening?
I think when Adam got injured and having to find a new date, that's why it didn't happen on June the 15th. But we did everything we could to make sure the fight still happened, and ultimately it requires two fighters to want to get in the ring.
Yeah. And I guess a final one that I did want to ask, and they did do the face-off, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, but when you look at doing a face-off for a fight that isn't signed and the fight doesn't end up happening, could you admit yourself that it does look a bit silly now?
No, I can see what it looks like, and I obviously do see it, and I get it, but the only this fight was Harlem signed for the fight, Adam Azim signed for the fight, we signed for the fight, we had a date, everyone was agreed. The reason it didn't happen on June 15th was because of an Adam Azim injury. So people can read into it, but that is the reality as to why it didn't happen on June the 15th. And since then we've tried everything, it's unfortunate because we were ready to go, and we thought Brighton would have been very, very attractive to Harlem.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the narrative that people would say would because that was when that face-off happened. That was straight after Adam vacated his EBU title with Dalton Smith. So a lot of the accusations now that it was just a smokescreen. Yeah. You would deny that and say that there was full intention.
Look, I'm smiling because I can see because I can see that the fact is we didn't want the Dalton Smith fight next. Not for what would have been on the table and all that. We didn't want it next. We wanted the Harlem Eubank fight. We signed for the Harlem Eubank fight. It's not happened because of Adam Azim. It's happened. Adam Azim was ready to go into that fight and signed for that fight. So did Harlem. So it's not happened because of Adam Azim. I think, as I say, he deserves a huge amount of credit to then fight Ohara Davies. And I think the reaction to that fight and the night that we're going to get on October the 19th is good for British boxing. It's good for Adam Azim, but ultimately that's the sequence of events, and sometimes people read into it far more than it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess moving on from Adam Azim, it's an exciting couple of weeks coming up. Obviously, September 21st, we've got Joshua Buatsi and Tyler Denny. But aside from that, in this period in August before I last caught up with you, October 12th, 4 fighters on the card: Jack Massey, Ben Whittaker, Chris Eubank Jr. and obviously Frazer Clarke in the massive one. All excited, I guess, for that 3-week space where you've got 6 fighters in general, 6 fighters all in massive fights on big stages.
Yeah, huge. I mean, Tyler Denny, it's a huge story. What an opportunity he's got, possibly in front of 95,000 people in Wembley before AJ Dubois against widely considered one of the best prospects in the country is huge. Josh Buatsi, interim world title, looking to put on a huge statement, massive. Frazer Clarke in the biggest rematch of the year, the biggest British heavyweight fight of the year, it's huge. Ben Whittaker in his biggest test, Eubank Jr, who our big signing, finally getting back in the ring. Jack Massey going and taking on Jai Opataya. It's been a whirlwind, to be honest, because a lot of these lads, particularly Tyler and Jack, if you think about where they've come from, their story, how we got them to European title, and now getting an opportunity like this is ridiculous. And then all the other lads that we think are stars of the future as well, getting their big opportunities. Have to say a huge thank you to His Excellency and Riyadh Season for recognising their talents, for recognising what they can bring to the table, for recognising their hard work, and they're making dreams come true. But they're also giving the fans some unbelievable nights, and it's going to be a busy few weeks. Obviously, nail-biting stuff for us. 6 fights that we want to win, 6 fights where we want 6 wins from, and I think we can do it. It's a couple of those guys are really taking on some massive tests, and looking forward to it.
One fight I did want to focus on in focus is obviously Fabio Wardley, Frazer Clarke. A great fight on the 31st that we had on the 31st of March. And sometimes, and when you look back on it now, you hate fights being a draw, but almost that was like, what we can sort of. I know you would have wanted obviously Frazer to win, but when you look back, a draw was probably fair. And I think when you look at Frazer's opinion of it, he said, if I didn't lose the point, I didn't get knocked down, he probably would have won the fight. So you look back on it now, get those almost 2 points where he lost it and cut out their mistakes, you're fully confident going into a rematch?
For me, it's Frazer to lose. Frazer, with that experience now, he's got to feel very confident going into this fight. And as you said, how he drew it last time should give him more confidence. Yeah, I think it's in Frazer's hands. I think he's going to do it. I think he can do it in style. But it's a huge rematch. And as you said, if we didn't get the draw, these guys wouldn't now be getting their biggest payday of their career, something that they couldn't have dreamt of 6 months ago, genuinely. And it's a huge fight. And for me, could have been a pay-per-view fight standalone. Genuinely, the amount of people that watched that fight, the amount of people that said to me that was why that's what they miss in boxing. You know, that reminded them of 20, 30 years ago, those big nights and big nights, you know, for everyone to see, not on pay-per-view, 50-50 fights, two old school fighters going at it. It was one of the best nights that I've had. And for them to both have the rematch now, it adds a huge amount to that card, and what is a special night on October the 12th, and yeah, both guys deserve it.
And I know that there was an idea that could have potentially been on September 21st. It didn't. Do you understand some sort of disappointment when we're not getting this? I know. Listen, fighters get paid the most amount, which is absolutely fine. But you understand some disappointment that we're not going to get that in the UK? Obviously,
I do. But ultimately, it's part of a card that 2 years ago you could have only dreamt of happening as a boxing fan. Bivol Beterbiev, Wardley Clarke, Shakur Stevenson, Ben Whittaker, Eubank Jr, Oppenheimer against Massey for the world title, all on one card. I'm missing fights there as well, but it's just ridiculous. So, yes, I understand, and we do want to, if you look at how many domestic fights we did in the first 6 months, from obviously Mayor Jonas may have come from the US, but big nights in the UK, Buatsi Aziz, Wardley Clarke, Riakporhe, Dalton Smith. We want to do it now. Adam Azim, Ohara Davies. We'd have loved to do Wardley Clarke too. But Riyadh season have given those guys a great opportunity, a great platform, a huge card, and they deserve to be able to put it where they want, given what they're giving to us, what they're giving to fans, what they're giving to fighters. And I'm honestly like, it's like when you sit back and think what the card is on September 21st, and then we get another thing on October the 12th, it's like, it's mind-blowing. I don't even see how it can get better than that. Like, I don't see it. So it's like, and then you've got December 21st coming up with the biggest fight in for a long time. It just, it's mind-blowing. It really is. I hope it can continue forever. If it can, it's going to show how big the sport is. His Excellency's plans around, you know, making it easier to watch and more accessible and is unbelievable for the sport, especially when the quality is this good. And so, yes, is there an adjustment for the British shows? And it's something I'm very conscious of. We really are committed to British boxing, grassroots boxing. We want to make sure that those shows are happening in the UK. We're adjusting because Whittaker, Eubank, Wardley Clarke could have all headline shows in the UK. It gives opportunities to others. And hopefully we're going to see some big British nights coming back, and if we can get the best of both worlds, it's going to be phenomenal. And yeah, as a boxing fan, looking at the next few weeks with obviously 3 nights we're in, September 21st and October 12th and October 19th, the 2 Riyadh season cards, just phenomenal, and pleasure to be involved in boxing at the moment.
Yeah, I guess we'll get onto that because I know you've got 6 fighters on from the 3 weeks with the 21st and the 12th. And I listened to your podcast with Simon Jordan and Spencer Roller on Talk Boxing, and you talked about how much of credit Spencer Brown was to actually getting you in. With that being said, and you've been open about having, I guess, a frosty relationship with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, and sort of, I guess, the same with Frank Warren, but did you ever feel that there was some oppression from them to not be allowed in?
I don't think they were going to roll out the red carpet, but, you know, Spencer Brown is the man in the sense that he doesn't give a he is there to help Riyadh season make the best fights, make the best nights possible. And I know he's got a lot of trust and everyone gets on with him. And so he's great to have for everyone. Yeah. And, credit to him, credit to Turkey Al Sheikh, credit to Riyadh Season for bringing all the promoters together. Who'd have thought we ever would see Frank and Eddie like this? Yeah. That's because of him. And of course, we for us, it's about making our fighters too good to ignore or too commercially valuable to ignore. And that's what we're doing. And we've built a stable in a short space of time that's still growing, that's got some household names in now, going into really exciting times in their career. You know, the guys that we signed at the start, the Adam Azims, the Ben Whittakers, the Frazer Clarkes, going now into headline main event territory. It's really exciting for us as a business because we've had to take our time. You know, you're competing against stables that have been maturing for 10 years, and so really excited. And credit again goes to Riyadh Season.
Yeah, and I know at the end of the day you're a businessman, you're focused on your promotional outfit, but do you see this as an opportunity, I guess, to improve relationships with Matchroom and Queensbury and obviously US promoters as well? Definitely.
Golden Boy were really helpful in getting Ohara Davies over the line. Great to have a great relationship with them, obviously working on a few other bits with them as well. And Riyadh Season are making I came into the sport and we want to work with other promoters. We dream of the sport. The sport can be so much bigger than it is, and everyone will win. And they're making it possible. And hopefully, it will create better relationships for all the promoters. But the main thing is, and the thing that the fans care about is whether the fights get made. That's all. That they don't care who gets on with who goes for lunch with who goes for a drink with this person, who gives a shit. What they care about is can the fights get made? Can the promoters work together? And that's what Riyadh Season are making possible for the benefit of the sport. And it's unbelievable to see because I don't think anyone else could have done it.
Absolutely. Just before I do touch on some of the October 12th fighters, obviously Eubank Jr and Whittaker, there was actually one fight I did want to ask you about that didn't end up on October 12th. A few rumours that was sort of circling around of Lawrence Okolie and Richard Riakporhe potentially being on that October 12th card. I don't know if there was any truth to that. If there wasn't, why didn't that end up on October 12th?
Look, it's a fight I think was talked about, but for me it's the fight that both of them won next. That for the Bridgerweight title, obviously both of them very, very tight at cruiserweight, massive lads, huge history. Obviously the fight that never happened really after the scrap in the cinema. So for both of them, I think that's the fight next. Whether in the UK, whether on a Riyadh Season card, we'll see. I know it's the fight that fans are calling for, so yeah, hopefully it happens next, and hopefully it can happen this year.
For sure, and I know you're happy with the October 12th card, but there's been a lot of critics, and I think a lot of the critics have been focused towards Chris Eubank Jr. Obviously, fighting Kamil Szrezmeta. Is it fair to say when someone like Chris Eubank Jr. who comes out and says, you know, he names his hit list of Conor Benn, Billy Joe Saunders, and all different sorts of, like Canelo as well was people who he's talking about. When he comes out with those names, and then you see him fighting someone like Szrezmeta, who, you know, if I'm being honest, obviously isn't on the level of the names that he mentions there. Is it fair for people to be frustrated about that?
With a big name, you're always going to want to see them in the biggest fights, and there's frustration from fans about Chris Eubank Jr.'s career in general, not winning a world title, not doing X, Y, Z, but ultimately he's a huge star. He's been out the ring a year. Szrezmeta is still a great fighter, and I think he's being disrespected a lot. And yes, he's not the big name, but that will come. And to have him on the card is going to bring a huge amount of eyeballs to Riyadh Season. We saw him on Good Morning Britain yesterday. There's not many fighters that just have that. You walk down the street and doesn't matter whether you're a boxing fan, cricket fan, football fan, you know who Chris Eubank Jr. is. And outside of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, I'm not sure there's another one right now. So Riyadh Season bring a lot of eyeballs, and then I'm hoping we're going to see him in the biggest fights possible.
Ben Whittaker taking on Liam Cameron. as you said on Talk Boxing, to quote yourself, you said you feel like Whittaker would be ready for the guys like Dan Aziz and Lyndon Arthur and at that British and European level by the end of next year. I think those comments did come to a surprise of a lot of people. I think when you look at the guys that have come through sort of on a similar level to Whittaker, obviously a guy like Imam Katayev who just got a win tonight, who obviously Whittaker beat in the Olympics. He's sort of fighting near on fringe world level now. When you see those sort of comment by yourself made about Whittaker, is it fair to worry that if the progression is that he's going to be at British level by next year, that may be a bit slow from what people expect?
Look, I think that was, to be honest, it could easily be earlier than that. It was obviously, we were just talking about what we think is next and those particular names. It could easily be earlier than that. But ultimately, we've got a superstar here in Ben Whittaker, and he was out the ring injured for a long time. He's managed to fight 5 times. Well, it would be 5 times he's fought this year. Liam Cameron is a huge step up. He's clearly not that far away. We mentioned that he's going to fight in the US next. And then next year, could those fights come early next year? Yes, of course. But ultimately, we're going to do what's right for Ben Whittaker. And we're going to look up and we're going to take names that make sense, and we're going to probably create the biggest star in British boxing. And he's knocking on that door already after a handful of fights. It's special to see. It really is special to see, and we should be very excited. When have you ever had a UK star after this many fights that US broadcasters want to broadcast and want to get him over there? Is unprecedented, and the numbers speak for themselves. He will bring more eyeballs to that event than possibly anyone on that card, Eubank Jr. aside, anyone. And so that's what we're dealing with here. The big fights will happen possibly earlier, but let's see and let's enjoy the journey, because there's something very, very special with him.
For sure. And sticking on the topic of Saudi Arabia, and you mentioned your relationship with Golden Boy there, and there is something I do want to ask you about. Turki Al-Sheikh, he came out and said that he's going to do, I think he called it Latinos Night on November 16th. And one fight that has been teased for that is Zurdo Ramirez and a unification with Chris Smith. Both of them have pretty much, I think Louis de Cuba's come out and said, we're looking at that fight next. Billy Smith's been pretty much open that is going to be next on November 16th. From yourself, that all gears towards November 16th for Chris Smith?
Yeah, talks ongoing, huge fight, huge occasion, massive journey with Chris. To get to this stage is remarkable from where we were. But he'll continue to prove people wrong, and whatever fight is next, he'll probably go in as the underdog, as he always has done. And we expect him to win, and hopefully have news on that soon. But can't say much more than that at this stage. For sure. And a final one from myself. And when you look at obviously what's happening in Saudi Arabia, always the concern was that UK boxing domestically would get neglected. I think it's fair to say in the summer, which it naturally always is, but this time more than ever, it's been a bit thin. I think I know we've got a great night on September 21st, but from then till I guess before Joyce Chisora, I think it's been about 3 UK shows, which is obviously Sam Noakes tonight, Denzel Bentley in August, and obviously your show with Callum Simpson in August. When you see, I guess, a lack of shows for 2 months and throughout the summer, is there a right for people to be, for myself to be worried that the big time boxing is going to be taken away from the UK? As we were speaking about earlier with Wardley Clarke as well. Boxing is tribal. It always will be. What Riyadh season are doing, it's funny because fans will worry. There's always going to be people saying, what about this, or moaning about this. Boxing's never been so good. Purely and simply, a lot of the fighters are getting opportunities in Riyadh season, and so there's a bit of an adjustment from promoters. British boxing is hugely important. We're definitely going to see that from ourselves. Azim Ohara is just a start. We've had huge events from January to June from Boxer in the UK, and that will continue. But let's just see where this lands, because it's a new phenomenon, and the promoters are getting used to it, the sport's getting used to it, the fighters are getting used to it, but you're still going to get those big British nights, because that's what creates stars. That's what created Chris Smith. That's what created Eubank Jr. to what they are today. That's how Ben Whittaker developed into a star. You've got to have that regularity, and so I wouldn't worry. I think you're going to end up potentially with the best of both worlds, where you're getting a huge British nights, you're getting the Champions League, so to speak, in Riyadh season, and it's phenomenal, and we should be really excited about where the sport is at.
Absolutely. And yeah, Ben, just want to say thank you for taking time to speak to me. As we do finish off, you got a final sign-off message to the people, mate?
No, just that Azim Ohara, huge fight, going really well. The interest is huge. It's going to be a huge undercard. And we talk about not having those big nights in British boxing at the moment. That is a huge one. And it really will be a big night on October the 19th. So anyone in the UK who's missing a big show, make sure you're there on October 19th.
Absolutely, Ben. Always a pleasure, mate. Really appreciate it, top man. Thank you.